What is good, YouTube? We are back again with another high-end rod review. My name is Brian. Couple housekeeping notes before we dive in on this review. Number one, I have an Instagram page set up now for Punch Fishing, so it's just going to be devoted to fishing and fishing gear. So you should give me a follow on the Instagram. The link will be down in the description. I love Instagram. I have a private account that's just for family stuff, but now I'm going to launch a new one that's going to be totally open to all of you. So please, please, please check it out. It's in the description. Housekeeping note number two, I want to say thank you to everyone who has been liking and subscribing to my videos. We're blowing up. We're almost at 1,500 subscribers. I think that's pretty awesome for just a dude who sits down in his basement and talks endlessly about fishing rods. I don't know why you guys are digging this so much, but I'm glad everybody is. It's stuff that I'm into. When I first started on this journey, I was trying to get information about like nicer mid-tier to high-end rod fishing rod information, and then it wasn't out there. I know, shout out to Tactical Bass, and they do a lot of really cool videos, but they don't really dive deep into the actual rods. They say, oh, I like this model, or we like this rod line, and that's kind of it. And I wanted a little more meat on the bone, so that's why I started making these videos, because it was content that I was interested in and wasn't really out there. So I'm glad other people are digging it, and I'm gonna keep plowing forward because I got so many rods that I gotta talk about and review. Today, this is a special one because I bumped this rod up in the review queue because I got my hands on the Megabass P5 Destroyer X-Bites. Now, I picked this rod up a couple weeks ago and I have been using the snot out of it. Every single fishing trip I've been out in the last couple weeks, I have put lots of time in this rod. I feel that I'm ready to talk about it like I know what I'm talking about because I've done so many things on it. It's been in my hands so much in the last month. If you're new to my channel, I don't review fishing rods unless I put them through the ringer. I don't like fishing channels or people, so sorry if I'm throwing a little shade, but I hate when people buy a rod, take it out of the box, and then do a review on it or an overview, and they say, oh, I'm gonna try it for all these things, I'm gonna frog with this, I'm gonna throw A-rigs, I'm gonna drop shot, and then they never make a follow-up video, and you never know, oh, well, did it actually do those things well? So a lot of people make a rod review or a rod video and then don't talk about any experience with it, and so that's what I'm doing on my channel. If I review or talk about a rod, you can pretty much guarantee I've fished the crap out of this rod. And I hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Please leave questions in the comments. Also, if you want to hit me up and talk directly, I think Instagram is going to be the best way to do that. So please follow me on the Instagram. So the Megabass P5 lineup. I was contemplating doing a video just talking about the 3 P5 rods I picked up and just doing a quick overview. I still might do that, but I really just want to talk about the X-Bites because this rod is really tickling my fancy. I love this thing. Okay, let's step back for a second and talk about the Megabass P5 rods. So Megabass, this is a completely new line of rods. I think there's 24 rods in this series. They are a JDM centered lineup, meaning a lot of the rods and tapers in action were designed for the Japanese market and the Japanese angler, which is mostly bank fishing, and they like shorter rods with way more parabolic actions. They tend to throw lighter baits, so a lot of the rod lineup is under 7 feet. Megabass is also making the P5 line available to US retailers. Even though it's a JDM tailored line, there's a lot of stores in the United States that are picking these up. So shout out to like Ben at Hookup Tackle. I got this particular rod from Tackle Trap. So shout out to the Tackle Trap. They sent me this one. They gave me a little bit of a discount, which I much appreciated. You can use their discount codes. I think there's a FB10 and a BBC10 code that you guys can use. So shout out to Tackle Trap. Problem is, a lot of these are completely sold out right now. A lot of the P5s that did make it over into the US, all the shops sold out of them. Like, they didn't have a huge stock of them to begin with, and they're already gone. So good luck trying to find one of these rods. They're going to restock later this summer. I know that they're going to be, more people are going to be getting them in like August and September. So keep your eye out if you want to pick up one of these. Now, the P5 rod lineup is a complete new redesign of the Destroyer series from Megabass. What I've learned by owning these rods now is they made an update to the guide train. These run SIC-S guides, not the SIC guides that you get on the US destroyers. They are a lighter version of the SIC guide. The SIC-S is the same guides that are on the Poison Adrenas. They're titanium framed, whereas the Poison Adrenas are stainless steel framed. So these are titanium. They're lighter than the Poison Adrena guides, but it's the same guide material, the SIC-S. I don't know much about the SIC-S other than that it's lighter. When you Google SIC-S guides, there's like no information out there. So if one of you rod builders know a lot about SIC-S guides, drop some information in the comments. I'll pump it up or pin it. I would like to learn more myself. Okay, so updated guides on the P5s. Also, the blanks are all new. They have a new type of construction. It's called 5D. I'm not going to dive into it because I don't really care that much. But the blanks are completely new and redesigned. They have a whole new way of making these blanks that are different from the US destroyers. Why does that matter? These things are way lighter and they're a little crisper. I'll talk about that later. But this rod is stupid light. I'm going to drop the actual weight in the description. I apologize I didn't look it up. But this is actually lighter than my NRX 873. So this rod is 1 inch shorter, but it is a bit lighter. Now, I wish I had the numbers written down. I don't have it, so I'm not going to say them, but check the comments. I'll throw it in there. So they really lighten these things up. These things are NRX level lightness now for less money. So they got a price bump. So these are more expensive by like anywhere from $50 to $90 over a like US destroyer. But they're lighter. They have an updated guide train. One of the tricks apparently that they use to lighten these things up a little bit, besides the new guide material, besides the new blank construction, is they're using less thread wrapping and epoxy on the guides. So when you compare this rod next to a destroyer, a US destroyer, I have a Deimos over there. I could look at it, but the guide material used in the wrapping and epoxy around all the guides are a lot less. They're chilling out a little bit on that on the P5s. Now, that doesn't mean they are worse or less flashy. What's interesting is they took this rod is so much less flashy than the previous destroyers. So the US destroyer line, they're glossy, they're gold accents, they're really flashy, they're really pop. There's a ton of crazy colors and materials in the guides. Megabass dialed it back on these rods. These rods are a lot more stealthy and a lot more subtle, and they're a lot less loud. Like when you put the Megabass US destroyers next to these P5s, it's like a lowrider, a pimped out lowrider versus like a black Corvette, right? So I use a lot of car analogies because I used to be a car guy. So these are a lot more subtle. They're still amazing quality. The craftsmanship, this doesn't have really flashy guide threads, but there's a nice little ring of dark green, then like a gunmetal gray, and then a little purple thread in all the guides going all the way up to the tip. Even the tip, where no one's ever even going to look at the guide threads on the tip, but this tip still has the little bit of green, a little bit of gunmetal, and then a little flash of purple right at the tip, and the smallest, teeniest, tiniest little section of tip you would never even look to see if there's fancy thread. My point is, Megabass is still the leader in the clubhouse for amazing fit and finish. All of the threads, all the epoxy is perfect. Everything's lined up. You can spin the rod around and you don't see any deviation on any of the guide threads. It's like a robot does this stuff. It's all perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. So, shout out to Megabass for still kicking ass on that front. Now, they totally changed the aesthetics. This is an all-new reel seat. This reel seat is completely different than the reel seat on the US destroyers. They've made significant changes to the trigger. The trigger is now a fat, wider trigger with a less pointy, I call the one on the US destroyers like a shark tooth. This does not have the shark tooth. It's more rounded off and flat. Also, they added grooves for your fingers. Now, I love this reel seat. I think they killed it on this thing. So if you notice, there's a groove here and a groove here. So when you palm this reel, your two fingers, your ring finger and your middle finger, wrap perfectly around that. It is so damn comfortable. I love this reel seat. It's one of the best reel seats I've probably ever felt in my life. This is way nicer than the NRX reel seat, way more comfortable, and your fingers get right on the exposed blank through there. It's really minimalistic, and it's matte. No more glossy finish on the Destroyer handles. All the US Destroyers, they have a very glossy, shiny, flashy grip. This is all just your flat matte black. Also, shout out to this lock nut. Now, I don't know if this lock nut is still the cosmetic piece that's glued to an inner plastic piece. I'm guessing that's still the case. So the issues that I have typically had with Megabass Destroyer rods going back many years is the glue comes undone and the cover, the cap on the lock nut slides off and falls off, and you got to re-glue the thing and reattach it. That might still be the case. I don't know yet. We'll see. If any of the Megabass people want to comment on that, go ahead. But man, this is literally the most beautiful, well-engineered, amazing-looking lock nut I've ever seen on a rod. Nobody in fishing right now has a lock nut that is this freaking sweet. I don't know if it's metal. Did they CNC this? Is it one piece? It must be, it's probably like a cosmetic piece that's over a sleeve. I don't know how they constructed this, but it is gorgeous. Also, the metal ring accents on this reel seat now is silver, no more gold like the previous ones. So if you thought the other ones were a little more flashy and you want something a little more like chill, the P5s is right up your alley. So you got this gorgeous, amazing looking lock nut. Then you got this really flat black, comfortable reel seat. You got more metal rings, more thread. There's accent threads here, the cork. So did Megabass finally get it right in the cork on the P5s? No, it's the exact same kind of okay cork that was on the Destroyers. You can see already that there's a lot of filler that's showing itself. I cleaned this and sealed it, and I'm confident it's gonna hold up to abuse like my other Megabass rods have. But man, there's filler all up and down this cork. So Megabass didn't really do a big step forward in the cork department. And so let's talk about a few other things. We're going to talk about the action and the applications for this rod, because that's really important on this particular X-Bites. But right now I'm just kind of going over the P5 line as a whole. Another thing that they did on this rod that we have to talk about is they weighted the butts. So to get the balance perfectly right, and I don't know why other companies aren't doing this, shout out to St. Croix, maybe you guys should think about doing this to actually like make your rods balance correctly. They put little bits of weights in the corner, and the weighting is different for each rod. So each rod has a specific amount of weight that Yuki Ito made sure to stick in the butt to make this balance perfectly. How well does that work? Let me show you. I have a Tatula SV, the new one, the 100, 103, 100, whatever. The latest, greatest Tatula SV on this reel. So it's not a lightweight reel, but it's not a heavy reel. It's I would consider it just kind of an average run-of-the-mill reel. Check out the bounce on this thing. Smack dab right on the lock nut. I mean, that is perfect. And if you went with a lighter reel, it's not going to get tip heavy. If you go with a slightly heavier reel, I don't think it's going to really change the balance that much. But the balance point is astonishing. It is perfect. Like whatever Yuki Ito decided to do with the weighted ends, nailed it. So, love the balance. Love the new look of the rod. I like the more subdued look. I mean, the Destroyers look amazing typically, but I like that they dial it back a little bit, but they still have all that nice quality kind of still there, but you got to kind of look for it a little harder, but it's all there. I wish they upgraded the cork. They didn't. Love the balance. Okay, so let's talk about the X-Bites. Now, this particular rod is a 5.5 power bottom contact rod. So Megabass says that this is their new jig Texas rig rod for fishing deep. It's a 7-foot 2-inch rod, so it's a little longer. It's got a gorgeous parabolic action. This rod is softer than, way softer than the FMJ. You can't even talk about this rod and the FMJ in the same conversation anymore. if you're an FMJ owner and you feel that that rod is a little too stiff and you want a really great jig rod that's got some a little more bend to it for setting hooks, get this thing. Sell the FMJ. I honestly am probably not going to run the FMJ anymore now that I have this rod, because this rod is a true perfect jig rod in my opinion. Also, this is a sick Texas rig rod. So since I picked up this rod, I have been almost fishing with this mostly with Texas rigs from, I've been doing a lot of 1/4 to 3/8, actually 3/8 ounce Texas rig flipping grass with this rod has been amazing. So this rod's action is really comparable to the Deimos, where the Deimos has a pretty good soft parabolic action. This thing is almost bit close to the Deimos as far as action. And actually it's maybe even a touch softer, but it's more powerful. So what's cool about this rod is it's actually got a nice soft parabolic action, a soft tip, but it's got gobs of power. It's not a flipping stick, but if you fish a lot of grass in like 6 to 15 foot of water and you want to get down there and flip grass, this rod's amazing. This rod is a killer Texas rig rod, a really great 3/8 to 1/2 ounce to maybe 5/8 jig rod. Not a heavier jig rod, definitely a lighter jig rod. This rod is amazing at finesse jigs. If you throw 1/4 ounce jigs, you want to have a smaller, like an itsy jig, itsy or bitsy jig, or a like something jig. This thing is going to be great at it. Also, I didn't want to do this review until I got out to Wisconsin on some rocky lakes and threw 1/4 ounce finesse football jigs with this rod, and it's so good. I was throwing a Nishini Lure Works 1/2 ounce finesse football jig with a craw on it in like 16 foot of water over rocks. I could feel everything. I felt every rock. I felt every time it touched grass. I felt all the bites. Setting a hook on this thing is so much fun. This rod is crazy sensitive, super crisp. When you lay into a fish and you crack them on this thing, it makes you smile. Super crisp blank. What's great about high-end rods is you're getting that parabolic action with a tremendous amount of power, and you're getting it in a really lightweight package. And that's why these things are so expensive. That's why you're paying over $400 for a rod, because you're getting lightweight, tons of power, parabolic action, and crazy fit and finish. So if you're looking at the price tag of these things, you're like, why are they almost $500? A lot of engineering goes into these things, and it shows. So one other thing that I found was really, really astonishing with this rod is how accurate I could cast with this thing. Because of that softer, little more parabolic tip, with the lightness of this rod, I was making pinpointed target casts at grass clumps and grass piles that I was shocked I was getting such good casts. I was like, this thing makes me feel like I'm a professional, like I'm like a really good caster, because of its action and its the way it loads and the way you can kind of flipping packages out like an EWG hook with a Texas rig pegged and just slip it into places. This is one of the most accurate casting rods I've ever used in my entire life. Setting hooks on this thing, you're not losing fish. You can really crack them on this thing. You can fish shallow with this. You can skip docks because of that tip. You can get 3/8 ounce jigs just up under docks. This is really just a do-it-all grass fishing rod with the parabolic action. You could totally use this thing to swim jig. You could totally throw spinner baits with this thing. You could throw chatterbaits. This is really an all-around rod that is amazing at bottom contact and grass fishing and even rock fishing with like football head jigs. I can't really think of much that this rod can't do, except it's not a flipping stick. It doesn't have that kind of power. You're not frogging with this thing unless you want to break it. This rod is just phenomenal. If I had to go 0 to 10, this thing is a 10. I am smitten with this rod. It makes its way onto my deck every single time I go out. I want to find excuses to use it because it makes you smile. It's such a pleasurable rod to use. Megabass knocked it out of the park with this thing. The X-Bites is the jam. If you flip grass, if you fish docks, if you need to go deep, shallow, and you want to have a Texas rig, a jig, not heavy jigging, we're talking 3/8 to a half. I wouldn't even go much more than a half on this thing. It might be a little overpowered. You could use this thing as a Senko rod, like fishing a Texas rig, weightless Senko. It could definitely do moving baits. It's parabolic enough to really set the hook on a single hook moving bait. Um, I can't gush enough about this rod. It's fantastic. So right now I'm going to run over, we're going to do a bend test, and we're going to compare this rod to the NRX 873 and the Megabass Deimos. So we'll show you a little bit about this action. It does have a crazy, crazy, crazy soft. It's not a spongy soft tip like the Legend X, but it is stout and the bend goes pretty far down into the blank. I mean, it's going down to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going about the 6th blank before it really starts getting into the backbone. And I've caught some 4-pound fish on this thing in the grass, and it does not let them loose. They ain't going anywhere. If you flip grass with like a 7.2 or 7.3 medium heavy, like an X-Pride or a Tatula, this rod is like those rods, but better. So if you're one of those guys who like to flip grass and you don't use a flipping stick, you like to use just a little longer medium heavy, this is exactly your type of rod. If you like flipping sticks and you like dropping like a 1/2 ounce or a 3/4 ounce or a full ounce into grass, this is not a flipping stick. That's not what this rod does. But if you're target casting and working very specific shallow grass, this is your ninja katana sword, man. This thing is it. So that's all I got to say about this rod. I could probably talk about this rod for 7 hours because I like it that much. But if you have a chance to get your hands on one, Tackle Trap, I think they're out of stock, but they'll probably get them back in. Ben at Hookup Tackle is going to get these back in. There's a few other places. You might be able to find them on eBay. But yeah, keep your eye open for the Megabass X Bites. Sell your FMJs. Buy one of these. You will be very happy. Let's go over to the bend test. Thanks. All right, here we are with the bend test. So I'm going to take the opportunity real quick to look at the X Bites versus the 873 NRX, which is the dragging bottom contact rod in the lineup. Now, the X Bites is rated up to 1 ounce, and the NRX is rated up to 3/4. They both are probably best throwing 1/2 ounce football jigs deep. What's interesting, though, is the X Bites is more parabolic and softer. Now, the X Bites is 1 inch shorter. The NRX is a 7.3, whereas the X Bites is a 7.2. But check this out. Now, remember, the 873 NRX is the soft NRX rod, which it's really not all that soft. But let's bring it right up at the tip. I mean, look at look how much more of a bend the X Bites has than the NRX. So it just shows you again how stiff the 873 NRX really is in real life. I mean, it's soft by NRX standards because the other rods are really, really stiff. But anyway, so that's up close to the tip. Look how much softer the X Bites in. The X Bites has a glorious bend down the blink. So even if I move my finger way further down the blink, the X Bites, that parabolic bend is still going, where the NRX, basically where my finger is right now, has pretty much shut off. So even if we go down a little lower, I mean, the X Bites bend is still, look how soft that thing still is. It's still going. So the point is, the X Bites has a deeper bend on the blank, a much softer action. Now, I think the best comparison to the X Bites is the Deimos. The Deimos is a 5 power, not a 5.5. So the rating is a little lighter on the Deimos. The Deimos is really good for Texas rigs as well. However, the X Bites gives you a little extra length. I think the Deimos is a 7. Oh, they're both 7.2. Sorry, I thought the Deimos was longer, but it's 7.2. Okay, so this is a great comparison because they're both 7.2. The X Bites is a 1/2 power higher. It's a 5.5 versus a 5. But what's interesting is the bends are pretty similar. So the Deimos is considered a moving bait rod that can also do bottom contact, and the X Bites is considered a bottom contact that can also do moving baits. So whatever. I definitely would be okay throwing swim jigs, chatterbaits, spinner baits, all that kind of stuff on the X Bites, because as you can see, it's got basically almost the same taper as the Deimos. So if we move our tip up or my finger up and we just really hit the tip, the X Bites is a little softer. It's actually dropping further than the Deimos. So the Deimos, and what I can see visually that's hard to see on the camera, is that the tip of the Deimos is actually firmer and stiffer than the tip on the X Bites. And the X Bites is a higher power rod, right? So it's really interesting. So as I move my finger down, and I get to about the 6th guide, they pretty much dead even. The X-Bites is lighter than the Deimos, has a little more blank deflection, and is a little more fun to use. The Deimos is not as sensitive. The X-Bites is considerably more sensitive than the Deimos on bottom contact applications. So they're both cool rods. I was actually shocked to see how similar they really are as far as action. So, like I said, Deimos, people consider it a moving bait rod that can do bottom contact. X-Bites is a bottom contact that, shocking, is really good for moving baits as well. So they're both really good. I always hit the ceiling. They're both really good all-around do-it-all rods, but if I could only take one with me on a desert island, it's definitely going to be the X-Bites, just because of the refinement and the lightness that the P5 series has in general. So until then, I got more reviews of these coming up. I'm going to review the Tequila Baccarat, and I'm going to review the Landsat next in the series. So stay tuned to that. If you've made it this far in the video, why are you not subscribed? Because you are clearly a rod snob and a rod addict. So hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you at the next one.